Welcome to this webinar on change resilience. You all on this wonderful evening. And today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Dr. Salome Divya Joseph, and she has done her master's in psychology from the University of Madras in the year 2012, and then done her PhD in psychology from University of Madras in the year 2018, and she worked as assistant professor of uh, SSS Jain College, Chennai, as assistant professor of psychology. And from 2017 to 19, she worked as assistant professor of psychology of Christ University, Bangalore. And then from December 2019 to December 2021, she worked as assistant professor and faculty coordinator, the Department of Psychology, SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. And now she is a consultant and guest faculty of SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. Her research interests are positive psychology and promoting mental health, developing effective modules for vocational development, guidance, counseling, and mentoring, workplace wellness, positive leadership in practice, and culture context specific assessments and interventions. And she is also a member of Indian Academy of Applied Psychology, IAAP, and she has numerous publications in various reputed journals, and she has a very rich publication record also. And with that very brief introduction, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Salome Divya Joseph. Madam, good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Suresh. Yeah,
Good
thank
evening.
you for that introduction. So we'll go ahead. I'm just going to share my screen. Are all of you able to see
Yes,
the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So today we look at quite an important topic called change resilience and how it helps us adapt to adversity. So all of us know that change is something that is constant, and it's probably the only thing that's constant, ironically, but we all have to be prepared to adapt to change, and that is what will determine the degree to which each of us can flourish. So when we look at this picture here, there's a small green stalk coming out from the ground. And in order for this to even emerge, it has to go through a process, right? It has to go through a lot of planting, watering, roots have to develop. And only when roots develop, you know that it's ready to actually grow. So this is basically what we mean by adapting, where we develop certain roots that actually help us in times of adversity. So in today's talk, we'll just look at these different aspects. So first of all, what is resilience and what is the nature of resilience? So in that aspect, we'll also look at what resilience is not, and how resilience brings in a certain resistance to change. We all have this. Whenever we are faced with the need to change, there is immediately this whole resistance, like, I don't want to change, right? That is what we experience. So how do we build certain competencies that allow us to overcome this resistance and build resilience? Then we do a small assessment, just 6 questions, each of you, to help you understand, what is your level of resilience, and what are the areas you can probably work on in terms of resilience. Then we look at the small concept called anti-fragile, and how we as individuals can become anti-fragile so that we are stronger in the face of adversity, and what this pattern of change resistance is, and how do we engage in change resistance as an at an individual level as well as a group level, and finally how we can eventually become change resilient. So Now, when I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and it would be nice to interact. I appreciate if you interact, and also since we're a small group, the more you interact, the better this session would be. It would be lovely to hear from you all. So, what do you see in this picture? Maybe you can type on the chat box if you're feeling shy to unmute yourself and speak, or if you're free, you're definitely free to unmute and answer. What is striking about this picture?
Dr. Saloni, I can see a girl standing somewhere in the wilderness, and she is connected to the earth energies. That's what I can make out.
Right. So there is something there that is there in the ground, right? And there is a certain degree of energy that she's getting from that space. Yeah, and you also mentioned wilderness where she's alone, no? So that's quite striking. Anything else? Anybody else? Yeah, the roots or beliefs make the person. Thank you for that response. So the roots are quite striking, no? The colorful
the different colors are probably the different frequencies of the energies. I don't know whether that's right or not.
Okay. Yeah, that's one perspective. There are different kinds of areas in which we all get energized, and these are the different, they are probably represented in different colors. Anybody else? What is striking about her hair? What does it tell us about the picture? We notice that everything is very still, but then her hair is flying. Why is it probably flying? It's probably windy, right? There is a stormy weather. Yeah, we don't have trees around to really judge by whether the trees are moving their branches or not. But we can see that her hair is flying. So there is this stormy environment, but she's able to stay grounded. She's able to stand tall. She's able to stand in one place because there are certain roots that are holding her to the ground. So resilience is all about exploring what these different roots are and how we can actually deepen these roots so that in the face of adversity, we're able to stand still, we're able to withstand, we're able to allow it to just pass, right? So it is a process, it is something that we engage with in adapting well in the face of adversity, in trauma, when tragedy strikes, when there are threats, or there is a very stressful environment. So why is it important to be resilient or to build resilience? It is not just to face challenges. Of course, facing challenges is the primary goal. But apart from this, it is also to grow from difficult experiences. So what do we mean by growing? Earlier on, some of you who are exposed to psychology as a subject might be aware of PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. So when someone goes through a very traumatic situation, something very grave, something very difficult, they might develop certain symptoms, all right? Symptoms of fear, certain symptoms of anxiety, and all these symptoms are clustered together and called as a particular disorder called PTSD. Now, researchers, particularly researchers from the field of positive psychology, have brought in a slight shift in perspective, because there are also so many people who do not develop PTSD. Rather, they show the development of PTG, which is post-traumatic growth. So when there are so many people who are actually growing through adversity, then why not learn from those who are growing through adverse circumstances? So one of the main goals of even talking about resilience is to also see if we are really growing from the setbacks that we experience in life. Moving on. Yeah. So what is the nature? How is resilience? How do we understand it as a concept? So one huge disclaimer, just because we're resilient does not mean that we won't experience difficulty or distress. difficulty and distress are inevitable, everyone's life has an adequate share of suffering. Of course, there are people who suffer much more than others, but all of us will be exposed to suffering at different points in life. So, resilience is about dealing with the trauma and the pain of change, the trauma and pain of suffering, the trauma and pain of adapting or losing, sickness, etc. One good news about resilience is that it is not a personality trait that only some people possess. So sometimes we think, no, he or she is so cheerful. That's their personality trait. And we feel like we can't be like them even if we want to, because personality wise, we're so different. So one good thing about resilience is, although it has certain associations with certain personality traits, it is not something that only some people can possess. Okay, it is something that everyone can learn to build. All right, or everyone can learn to inculcate as part of their character strength. So resilience is not just some people are born with resilient. We can become resilient, and it involves, what does it involve? Certain behaviors, certain thoughts, certain actions that we all can engage with and develop. And one of the prerequisites for resilience is that it takes time and intentionality. So overnight, we are not going to become resilient. Of course, all of us can have these experiences where we change in a jiffy. No, we have some very big life experience or very moving life experience. So we call them defining moments, or we call them turning points in life. So with all due respect to turning points that we experience, resilience is something that takes time and we should intentionally cultivate it. If we are not intentionally cultivating resilience, it's very difficult for these roots to go deeper. They might still be there because all of us have certain strengths which we use when we are faced with difficulties. But if we're not building it, they may not go deep enough. All right. So I'm going to give you a quick activity now. I want you to think of a time in life where a particular door closed. So what do we mean by a closed door? It could mean a lost opportunity. It could mean the death of a loved one. It could mean not getting that job that you wanted, or the breakup of a relationship. It could mean any of these things where suddenly a door was shut, where you felt like you were progressing and everything came to a standstill. And just reflect on that experience and think of all the strategies and the strengths that you used to endure that period and to overcome the challenge till the time another door opened. Or if not another door opened, the situation changed or it passed and you had something else to do. You had some other sense of meaning. You had some other purpose that was open for you. All right, or some other opportunity came along. So all of us would have experienced closed doors as well as some open doors. So each of us have a different share of strategies and strengths that we use to overcome challenges. And it is important for us through reflection to identify what are these strengths and strategies that we ourselves have used in the past, because that becomes something we can take into the future. So in the future, when we're dealing with a closed door or when we're dealing with a challenge, we know that this is something that I've experienced and this is something that I hold as a strength. Right? So I want us to notice, I would love if some of you put up these strengths and strategies on the chat, because it can really help us as we move on to the rest of the session. So I will look forward to your responses now. One of the strengths that I am able to recollect when I am faced with difficulties is friendships. Just being able to talk to a friend, call a friend, tell them what's going on, get their suggestions, or just get them to listen to you and maybe reflect on what you're saying. There's friendships can be a huge strength to some people. Yeah, I've got a response saying self-esteem. Yes, to always know that you are valuable, to place a sense of worth on yourself. That's something that can really hold you through very difficult circumstances. Thank you for that response. Any other responses? What is it that helped you? Previous achievements? Excellent. Yeah, when we know that, yeah, I'm not a loser, right? This didn't happen for me, but so many other things have happened. So many things have led me to where I am now. And I can, to a certain extent, rest on my laurels. Nothing wrong with that, right? What else? I see there are around 18 of us here, apart from me. So I'm sure we can get at least 18 responses. Yeah. Very important point being brought up. Ignored updating of my skills as long as the door is open. Once the door is closed, a lot of introspection happens. Excellent. So this insight, that closed doors can actually be an opportunity for growth. And that is what they say post-traumatic growth is all about. Because if that incident never happened, I would have never grown in this area. Right? To see it as an opportunity for growth. And to know that life itself is a struggle. Yeah, just to have that awareness that things can't always go the way we expect and we like it. So when we lower our expectations to a certain extent, we are able to develop a sense of resilience. Yeah, thank you for these responses. So I would just urge each of you to keep these points at the back of your mind. I'm also getting some other responses that, listening to positive quotes and motivation, all this motivational quotes or motivational talks that can really encourage you, right? So keep this at the back of your mind as we move forward, because this is something that you can add to your own resilience toolkit. So when you're faced with adversity, you know that this has worked for you and it is likely to work for you in the future. Yeah. So now these are some core competence that researchers have spoken about as far as building resilience is concerned. So I've just put these components together. They come under 4 different headings, and all of you will be familiar with this. But why we're talking about this is because when we label them, like point 1, 2, 3, 4, we have a certain space to start, or we have a starting point of how we can intentionally cultivate this. So please make note that these are like key starting points. Beyond this, you can keep including activities, you can include competencies that you have, which will build on these. All right, but this is almost like a basis. Okay, so the first is a sense of connection. So the automatic response that most of us experience when there is an adverse situation is to isolate. And that's why it's important to know that connection is important, so that we're aware that our tendency to isolate is tempting us and we know that it's not good for us. So it is important to seek connection. Now, I'll clarify something when we're talking about connection. We all know that we live in a social world. We are social beings. We need interaction with other people. But a lot of times, because of the way social media operates and because of the way we have evolved, people believe that those with a larger social circle tend to have a greater sense of connection. Okay, we know networking is very important, having good networks is essential. But when it comes to resilience, when it comes to building resilience, a sense of connection could be limited to as less as a single person or a single relationship. Okay, research has shown that if you have that one person you can talk to about your problems, that takes a huge load off your shoulder. So immediately don't think you have to build so many friendships. You need so many people in your friends list and your social media accounts. No. All right. That is something different. That is as far as your social image is concerned. But as far as your sense of connection is concerned, you can just have that single friend. You can have 2, 3 friends. Okay. Or you can have a family member who you rely on, where these relationships, they will act as a support system. So what do we mean as support system? We have to identify how these relationships work. So I know that I have a friend and I know that I have a parent who can support me. Okay, so if this is my understanding, I might want emotional support from my friends and I might want practical support from my parent. Likewise, parents might think I need practical support from my children, but I'm not going to seek emotional support from the children. Now, this is very important. Always remember that in family circles, as much as we like to give and take emotional, consolation from each other, it does not always work. So, of course, we can be there. We give each other a sense of meaning. We give each other the support they need, but practical support works better in the family, and emotional support works better with friends, because those ties are not there. We're not bound by certain obligations, so it's much easier to offer emotional support when we don't have those very strong responsibilities and bondages of being in a very close relationship that will restrict the extent to which we can give emotional support. All right. The next is wellness. So wellness, particularly focusing on our mind and body, our feelings and our bodily sensations. What are we experiencing? How can we improve our physical wellness and our emotional wellness? So one way to, there are different ways to build our physical wellness. We all know it, but it's a matter of identifying what works for us. So simple question. When you're going through something so painful, how do you process it? One way is to just sit and observe your physical bodily sensations, right? Where you're giving it the attention it's asking for. Right? That is one practice of physical wellness. Just observe, don't ignore. So when you feel sad, try to see where in my body is the sadness. It could be a feeling in the heart, it could be just a headache, it could be a heaviness in the head or a heaviness in the chest. Just observe your body, give it the attention it needs. All right, it could also mean physical exercise, right? So are we getting that little bit of physical activity that we need every day? Are we taking in food that is good for our bodies, right? So these are the questions we ask around wellness, around physical wellness. Then emotional wellness, am I listening to my feelings? Am I able to sense them? Or am I just ignoring it? So when I feel very sad, am I able to say, yes, I'm feeling sad? And what am I going to do about it? Maybe I can talk to someone about it. Maybe I can write down. I can journal. I can express my emotions on paper. Right? So we need that catharsis. We need to express our emotions. We can't just keep bottling them up, because when we bottle them up, they're likely to explode one day and cause negative consequences to ourselves as well as others. So taking care of our emotional and our physical selves. Then developing a healthy thinking pattern. So in every situation, there are choices that we make. We can either deny the situation or we can gradually accept the situation. Now we have this particular order because by noticing what we're going through, it allows us to accept the situation better. All right. So, of course, when very difficult events happen, our immediate reaction is to deny them, to think that no, it never happened, it should not have happened. But then slowly we shift to accepting what has happened and bringing in a certain shift in perspective. So, explore alternative perspectives, like what could be the positive outcomes, what are the ways in which I can grow. So these questions, we go with a certain curiosity, we ask these questions to ourselves. All right, and that can really help us build this core competency of healthy thinking. And finally, meaning making. A very crucial component of building resilience is how do we build a sense of meaning. And the first way is through self-discovery. Use it as an opportunity to understand who I am. This trouble or this circumstance or this challenge is teaching me something about myself. What are my vulnerabilities? What are the things I probably did wrong? What are the things I should be working on cultivating to live a better life? Right? So use it as an opportunity for self-discovery. helping others. Now, there is so much research that shows that this quality of altruism, right? To go out of your way and help others, even when there is no benefit for yourself. So people who are altruistic tend to have a better sense of meaning. And this is seen as a buffer in developing certain long-term mental health issues like depression. So research has shown that actually helping others can even protect your own well-being and improve your mental health. All right. So try to engage in meaningful activity of helping others. And finally, goal orientation. So sometimes we might be just totally thrown off guard, and we might have to rephrase or rethink our priorities and realign our goals. We have to make new goals, and when we can't think very long term because of the life situation that we are in, have small goals, daily goals, weekly goals. The more we write down these small goals and the more we start achieving these little goals, it could be something as simple as that I just get through today by being kind to myself. And the moment you do that and you get through that, you are likely to get motivated and hopeful. All right. So goal orientation increases a sense of hope. All right. Research shows us that those who have better goal orientation are more hopeful. So this is something that we can definitely cultivate during times of crisis. So now there is a small opportunity to take this quick questionnaire. You have 6 questions here, and you'll get answers ranging from 6 to 30. All right. I just want you to tick whichever box suits you. All right. You have responses ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Accordingly, you can mark the questions. Yeah. Suresh, I think I'll need to, share my screen again. Yeah. Are you able to see the screen, all of you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can just answer the questions just to find out where you stand on a scale of 5 to 30, just for some self-awareness. Now, this is not to classify you as someone with very low resilience or someone with very high resilience, but just to know on a scale of 5 to 30, where am I, and what are these items for which I can probably work on, right? It would be nice if some of you can voluntarily share your scores. So after you tick, just add up whatever number is there alongside your box. Okay. And that would give you the total score. If 1 or 2 of you can share your scores, I'll give you around 2 minutes to do this. Yeah, so we've got 1 score, we've got 2 scores. Yeah, thank you for sharing. You can probably look at these items where your score is quite high, maybe 4 or 5, and those could be your strengths. And you can also look at those where you've not scored so much, and those could be areas where you can really improve, or that this is the area where you should be working on, right? So for example, if you feel like the point where you need to improve is in terms of the time it takes for you to recover, so you could ask the question, what is it that takes me so much time, and what do I do during that time? Am I working on it, or am I really shutting myself out from dealing with it? Maybe I don't have sufficient social support, and that's what, or I don't have a relationship where I can talk about it, and that's what takes so much time. So it's good to go with a certain degree of curiosity around why this why this particular statement makes me get a lower score, right? So be curious about it, and always work from a point of non-judgment. So don't judge yourself too harshly that, oh, this is really bad, and this area where I should improve, and this is, I don't have, it's my weakness. It's okay. All of us have these strengths and weaknesses, but it's important to go with a spirit of curiosity, right? Why am I the way I am? That way you're going to just build on something that's already there, rather than feeling demotivated to move forward. Okay, so always be curious about both your strengths as well as your weaknesses. So now, where have you seen these flowers before? Has anyone seen this before? Do you recognize it? What is the significance? Any responses?
Are they in the desert?
Yeah, there is. Okay. These are not particularly in the desert, but they're found in dry and thorny areas. Yeah. And those of you I'm not sure about North India, but in South India, you have, these hill stations called Ooty and Kodaikanal, where, you'll find people among the hills collecting these flowers and selling them as a bunch. And tourists buy them and go because they call them everlasting flowers. Of course, it's not their scientific name. It is a colloquial name given called everlasting flowers. And the reason they call it this is because they don't dry out. They are real, but they don't dry out easily. They can last for almost about a year. And if you sprinkle a little bit of water now and then, they'll come for, they last for even longer. And you just have to keep them in a bunch. And they're actually real flowers that grew out of the mud and not plastic. Okay, although they give that kind of an appearance. Okay, so this is just to give just of what this concept of anti-fragile is. That, when we think of fragile, what is it we think of? We think of a glass, right? Something just falling and shattering into bits. So sometimes when we are fragile, when life throws problems at us, we're likely to fall and shatter. So just notice about yourself. Are you the kind of person who's easily shattered, right? And then see, why am I shattering so easily? All right. And what is it that I can do to become anti-fragile? So researchers have coined this term anti-fragile, and just to show that, are we the kind of people, can we become this kind of person who, irrespective of my circumstances, I might have a very thorny environment, I might have a very dry environment without much resources, but how can I be the best that I can, and how can I really make my resources last? All right, these are questions that we can ask, and we can learn from nature. We can see these patterns in nature, how growth takes place. Every plant, how it first has to build some roots to actually flourish on top. All right. Yeah, so this is an interesting, curve that we all might have experienced. You can probably even take some personal experience and link it to this curve. So when there is some very drastic thing that happens in your life, you are expected to adapt. And what happens? Initially, there is this huge denial. No, it did not happen. It cannot be so. How can this happen to me? Right? So that is the stage of denial, where we're doing all sorts of things to try to restore the situation to what it was, even when we know that it is not going to be so, right? And this is so what we do in terms of our motivation to work through the situation, we're actually increasing. When we're in this denial stage, we sort of push our performance, or we work towards achieving something. But what happens, we're not doing it with a sense of acceptance, right? So in terms of our motivation and our experience in working with the problem, there is a certain increase, okay? But then what happens, with some time, there is a realization that no, this is not going to work. This has actually happened, right? So when reality sets in, we reach a point of anger. And this is where the resistance comes. When I have realized the situation, I've realized the adversity, then I am resistant. Why did this happen? How can this happen to me? This should not have happened. There, so many other people, this could have happened. Why did it happen to me? All right. And what is it that really prevents us from change? Is it change itself? Why do we have this resistance? So what is change resistance? It is a tendency to resist any change when there is a force from the external environment or from within ourselves. Sometimes we are forced to change, but we are resisting it. And why does this resistance come? Because of uncertainty. So it is not change itself that we are afraid of, but it is the unsurety of the unknown. It is the unsurety of what the consequences will be. All right. So it is the uncertainty of change that we are afraid about. And that is what causes the resistance. So whenever we are faced with this resistance, it's important to ask ourselves, what am I uncertain about? What am I afraid about? And then we'll realize it is not change. It is, what are these uncertainties? And then we can address the uncertainties. We can explore, we can be curious about how we deal with these uncertainties. Okay. And one of the best ways in which we can really let go of these intense feelings, this bitterness, is by seeing what this change can give me. How can I benefit, or how can I move forward? And is this change necessarily so bad? All right. So what is it? So this sets us on that searching process. So as we let go, we're able to start exploring. We're able to look for aspects that this problem can help us grow, the areas in which it can propel us towards the future. All right. And this is where we can engage in this process of meaning making. And slowly we'll find that our performance, our dedication, our motivation towards change, towards the future, slowly builds up. So letting go of the bitterness, letting go of the anger, the sadness, the pain, sets us on this path of exploration and searching and trying to look beyond, all right, what is happening now, and see what is possible, what is a possible future, right? And when we explore the possibilities of the future, in what ways can this actually make my future brighter, right? When we start exploring that, it creates a desire to move forward. And this desire will really push us towards understanding the meaning, towards internalizing this change, where we know that, okay, this has happened, I've accepted it, I've moved on, and this is going to be good for me. Where this is where we say that the change has actually internalized. It's become a part of us, and it's become something that we wholeheartedly accept. And when that happens, we're able to move forward. And when this resistance comes, one of the questions we need to know, or we need to ask ourselves, is this at an individual level or a systemic level? So individual level is when it happens personally for me. Systemic is when it's happening as a whole. So particularly those of us who work in organizations, we might be familiar with this, where some change is required, and then at an organizational level we are experiencing that resistance. Particularly with the pandemic, all of us initially had to work from home, and families were really struggling, taking care of children, cooking, doing all the household chores, working online. There was so much chaos, and finally people adapted. And just when they began to become comfortable with working from home, again we have to work from campus. And then what happens? There is this whole systemic resistance. So there are different dynamics in systemic resistance, because you also have other people resisting along with you. So even when you're engaging as an individual, and this is when group work helps, because you can't fully come out of it if you're only working as an individual, but you can also try to engage groups. So if you are someone who works with groups, or if you are someone who works with organizations, you can explore ways of taking a larger group through this change curve, through this process of exploring, of letting go, of searching, seeing the different possibilities, creating a desire for change. So before we close, these are some takeaways. So what does it mean to be resilient? Just some simple pointers that we can learn, or we can be in touch with these words when we think of change resilience. So first is to just accept that chaos is a part of life. No one's life is perfect. No one's life can go as planned. Even the most planned person can have periods of intense chaos. So that is something that we are in touch with. Evolutionary theory also shows that we all exist. Okay, and even our world today is existing in a certain degree of chaos. All right, so there is also some patterns that we can identify in chaos. All right, so it is important for us, when we are faced with adversity and when there is chaos created or chaos comes into the picture, to share the intent. All right, so what do we mean by sharing intent? If we are requiring change of others, it is important to express this purpose of change, or it is important to ask what is the intention of change, especially when this change is not from a natural source. Sometimes when tragedy strikes, it is something that is inevitable, but when we need to initiate change, it is important to share intent. Trust the people involved in this change. Okay, and stay grounded. How do we stay grounded? Develop roots. How do we develop roots? Work on building core competencies. Okay, then we shift to this aspect of embracing change. Not always look at change as something that is negative and going to really ruin my life. It might seemingly feel like that, but when we go with this spirit of exploration, spirit of inquiry, what is it that's working for me? What is it that's not working? What are the potential changes? What are the potential benefits of this kind of a change? Right? And then you'll see that there are endless possibilities of, future uh, future possibilities that you can envision in this changed environment, and embrace that, right? And then finally, give yourself a break, take pauses, reflect on what's working, reflect on what's not working, reflect on how many opportunities that this opens up for you, this one closed door, how it can open up certain other opportunities. And also celebrate failures. So what do we mean by celebrating failures? Now, we don't feel like celebrating when we fail, but to celebrate it is to acknowledge it and to learn, so that we don't repeat the same mistake that we made earlier. And that can really build into our resilience competency, right? And extract learning. So look back on our past, reflect on what has worked for us, and that can be a good point to start in dealing with future problems. Okay, so thank you all for your patient listening. And in conclusion, just want to leave you with this one quote, that life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. It's not so. We can't change our external environment, but we can get stronger and more resilient. So we can really work on deepening those roots, becoming more resilient and moving forward with a greater degree of ease, where we don't have to really wait for the problem to come for us to build resilience or become resilient, but we become the kind of people who are able to be resilient in spite of whatever life throws at us. All right, so we'll stop here and I'll be happy to take a couple of questions. Thank you all for your patient listening.
Very nice talk, ma'am, and very enlightening. And I would love to be in touch with you. Can you please guide that where can we follow you, somewhere in social media or otherwise?
Definitely. So my LinkedIn account is Salome Divya Joseph. You can, and I'll just type my email ID here, salome.divya@gmail.com. Simple address. Yeah, so you can make note of this email address, and oh, I think it has gone to only one person. Sorry. Thank you all for your appreciation.
If there are any questions, you can just ask in the chat box, or you can just unmute. And anybody, any questions from the audience? There are so many people, around 24 people here.
So, ma'am, in case no one else is very keen, I would like to ask one more question.
Sure. Yeah.
See, when you have those adversities, something which is really comes as a hurting something to you or disappointment, you are at that time too much immersed into emotions.
Yeah.
And my question to you is that, does this improve if you do the self introspective and be mindful? I mean, are there more activities like meditation or affirmations and journaling? Of course, you said that we need to sit and write and speak to our own selves, spend the me time, I think.
Yes.
And besides that, since India is a country very rich in these spiritual activities, so I would love to know more about it.
Yeah, so spirituality is also one of those things when it comes to meaning making, no? So when we looked at the 4 core competencies, no? So one of the things you can ask yourself is, are you engaging in some aspects of all these 4? Not everyone can engage in all aspects of the 4 core competencies. So in terms of our well-being, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, am I doing little bit of that exercise? Sometimes just a 1-minute jog can really change my mood. No, so what happens in our body when we do some physical activity? So sometimes when our mind is not cooperating with our bodies or our willpower, we're not getting the will to feel better. Then what we do, we just use the body. We do some jogging. What happens? There are release of certain hormones and neurotransmitters, which give us the same feeling when we feel a little good, right? So that can really work in helping us cope with the situation. So ensure that these different components are there, that the well-being component, that the meaning-making component, all the core competencies that we discussed, no? So if all these are there, we are likely to really quickly let it pass. So connections. So are we having that support system? Do we have that one person who we can talk to a certain extent about the problem? And also bringing in the shift in perspective. Am I only thinking in a single way, or am I entertaining multiple perspectives? So it's not easy to immediately change our mind, but just be curious. Okay, so I think that this what happened is unacceptable. That's what might be really heavy on us at that time. But then just go with the curiosity. What if this is not so bad? No, so to slowly entertain different perspectives. So that little bit of exploration and openness and entertaining can actually play a huge role in helping us get through. And slowly we'll see our emotions shifting from that intense period of sadness and pain to a little bit of acceptance and, okay, it's not so bad, there's a little hope, and then there is a gradual shift, and soon you notice that those emotions just disappeared, or just dissipated and fizzled out, and they're more like memories to us.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for that wonderful answer. And we have got some messages in the chat. Someone says, "Thank you very much. Now I'm able to understand the meaning and scope of resilience. The change curve is really an action plan. Celebrating failures is totally new revelation to me."
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am, for an informative session. Though I couldn't join in time, whatever I heard was enriching. Please recommend one book to become resilient.
Okay. One of the I'll also recommend a book is Positive Psychology Principles and Practices. You'll find it online also. It's by three authors, Snyder, Lopez, and Pedrotti. All right. So this is one of the books you can refer to. It's more theoretical. If you're looking for a talk, you can look for this talk on anti-fragile. It's a very short talk on, you'll find it on YouTube by a person called Tal Ben-Shahar. He's a professor who's doing a lot of research in the area of resilience, and wonderful videos and talks are also there where you understand more about becoming anti-fragile.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you write it on the chat?
Yeah.
That would be nice of you.
Positive Psychology by Snyder. Maybe I'll just put a link to that talk. Just give me a minute. Yeah, so there is this talk called "Don't Chase Happiness, Become Anti-Fragile" by Tal Ben-Shahar. I put the link to the talk on the chat. It's a very short talk, but quite insightful, just 5 minutes or so. There are others also by the same professor.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for this wonderful session. I thank everyone for being with us all this time. And I thank Dr. Salome Divya Joseph for giving her wonderful time and sharing a lot of valuable inputs about change resilience. And I hope many of the participants have grabbed this change resilience. What are these terms? And you must have got some takeaway from today's session. I would be very happy if you can type your key takeaway from today's session in the chat box. Anyone? Yeah, we already got some answers. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Suresh, for the opportunity, and thank you all.
Yes.
Those of you who would like can write to me.
Sure, friends. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Salome ma'am. Thank you, everyone. So I have put the link to the YouTube channel of Psycollege in the chat box. So please follow that. This was also live on YouTube. Our YouTube channel link also I have shared in the chat box. Please follow it. Salome ma'am, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Have a great time.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Good evening.
Have a great time. Bye.
Bye.